all of these people are right now without an income because schools are shut, and the way that private schools make money is by you paying school fees. And this is it. So what is it, the plight of these teachers? What's the plight of the people who have invested in these businesses? What is the plight of the students as well? And was it a good move to ask to remain and say, let's remain closed? And we were speaking to the CAS in the Ministry of Education, Zach Kinodia, who was telling us, look, it's all about the first thing and the core function of a government is protection of lives and property.
It brings to mind, Eric, the question is, what has the government done? Or what ought it to have done that it hasn't done? It's all good and well to talk about the roles of the government, but you cannot talk about the role in a vacuum and not discuss what hasn't been done to ensure that this same safety that he was talking about is actually put in place.
All those safety measures.
Yes. They are not very lofty safety measures. They're not very... And remember, the discussion veered off from just schools, and we said there are people who are supposed to sit the exams this year.
Right.
Okay? They are a fraction of the students who are supposed to be in school. Can there be a consideration for them? Because if you are saying there's a huge problem with letting all students back in school, but what about just this specific group who are supposed to be sitting for the exams? Because I look at it this way. Talking about where do they go after this, should that not be a different problem altogether after they've sat for the exams? Should
Let
that
them
not
write
be,
the exam first.
yes, should that not be? Because you're compounding it. Because if they do not sit for the exams and they repeat, it means everybody else is repeating. It's not as though this problem is going to go away because they don't sit for the exams.
Yeah.
No.
And that's why they arrived at the decision that everybody repeats.
You know,
So is that a good or a bad decision? Let's bring in Wilson Sossion. He's the Secretary General of the Kenya National Union of Teachers and also a nominated Member of Parliament. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning to you.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Very good. Welcome to the Situation Room.
The rest of Kenyans in collectively fighting the pandemic that has distorted our livelihood.
Good. Now, Wilson, you heard, of course, and you are aware of what the Ministry of Education has said, that basic education has lost a year. And
Yeah, and it is not only in Kenya. This is a global phenomenon.
Yep.
With the spread of this pandemic and with the very devastating effects, and with evidence that any crowding will lead to the spiking of the spread of the disease. Schools are potential centers of spreading of the disease, according to the reports of medical experts and global government advice not to open schools unless there is evidence that the curve has been flattened, and the scientists are very clear that a country must register 14 continuous days of substantial reduction of cases before we can rethink of resuming schools. And that is why in Kenya, avoidance of doubt from the analysis of medical experts, the scientific projection, the peak of this virus will be in the months of August and September. And the warnings are very clear that if we open schools in the month of September, then the virus will spike and we might have minimum of 30,000 Kenyans dying. So we have to bite the bullet of postponing resumption of learning. And this one must be understood by everyone. It is postponement of learning in all basic education institutions. And so when we resume in January, the issue of students repeating classes should not arise. No, nobody is repeating any class. We are picking and starting from where we left and continuing with the program uniformly across all classes, equitably.
Yeah.
So a child in Form 4 and that in Form 1 are the same, and they all begin from where they left
Okay,
and
so
where they stopped.
So Wilson, I mean, just from the interpretation that quite a number of people have had of this, what we are saying essentially is that whereas it may have been said before that all that you had learned, whether it was for 3 months, has been lost.
Yeah, that one now, that should not be the problem of anybody. That now becomes the problem of teachers and government in terms of curriculum implementation. You all know that's the work of teachers, and teachers will be able to take through the learners the work that they've done so that you reconnect. So lesson review and content review is part of teaching, and teachers will be able to do that. I urge everybody, don't take over the professional role of teachers. We shall resume teaching, knowing that these learners have been out of action for a long time. They must have lost content, and therefore we will be doing not just teaching, but revision of many topics. And therefore, the teaching style and teaching delivery after we resume will be different. It will not be ordinary teaching. And that is why we will need to prepare teachers for teaching delivery or pedagogy of what we call the COVID-19. Because we shall be teaching children who are anxious, children who have been out for a long time, children who have forgotten even the content, who have lost content completely, and we have to bring back the content. And so the teaching approach will be different, and we are prepared for it. So those are the challenges that come with prolonged school break out of the inevitable situation.
Mrs. Sossion, are you saying that all schools in this country were not involved in any learning whatsoever? My question is, do I hear you saying that all the schools in this country, primary and secondary, were not involved in any form of learning at all?
Very clearly, schools were closed on the 15th of March. And if there have been any other activities of learning, whether online by some schools, we know the international schools have been conducting online learning, and some private schools, that's a different matter. The law and the phase of the program recognizes that learning stopped on the 15th of March. And so when it resumes, we shall resume from where we stopped, regardless of whether some institution conducted learning using other alternative modes.
Yeah.
That is the principle of equity and access. And that is where we will begin from, regardless of any activity that goes on. Yes.
It sounds very draconian from where I sit, because and it sounds to me like something that is being propagated to hide the government's inability to actually cater for learning beyond what we call traditional classroom learning.
This is not the time. We are in what we call education during crisis. And it would be very wrong to accuse anybody, and even to accuse the government. I would vote for what the government is doing. This is a crisis that can lead to near deaths of people. And therefore, we do what we must do. And we have done what we have to do. The topmost priority now, so that those who are safe and healthy cannot leisurely talk carelessly about what is happening. The government is grappling with safety and health of teachers and learners, and this we have engaged through a democratic process. And I think I commend the government of Kenya for allowing the sector to debate freely, unlike what we are seeing in other countries, where governments are forcing opening of schools, and we have heard the research of the virus and death of students. So right now, the environment in which we are is delivering education during crisis, and we must take decisions that are sound, decisions that are guided scientifically. And so, fundamentally, learning in all institutions was suspended from the 15th of March.
Yes.
And remained suspended until January. We shall be meeting to review as a sector. This is the business of the sector. And we urge Kenyans and the rest of the citizens not to over-politicize and step into even areas that is not within their ambit in terms of law, like teaching. Teaching is the business of teachers. And we shall resume teaching at a time when we shall be told to do so and when it will be safe to do so.
So are
and
you
when
saying,
all
Mr. Sossion, that
therefore, fundamentally, the actions that have been taken by government are right, and we support as teachers. Right now, let us focus in dealing with the COVID and ensuring that learners are safe at home, and so the household should ensure that children are meaningfully engaged in different activities in their own homes, where it is possible to conduct alternative modes of learning in their homes. Let them do so. It's democratic, but we resume in January, and we shall be able to fix everything.
Okay, so Mr. Sossion, now you talked about engagement of students at home by their parents. We also heard the CS talk about home tuition. And he actually said that parents can actually get in touch with schools and teachers and find out how that can be done. What do you think about that?
Now, what the minister is offering is that, and you see there is democracy in education, that you are free to guide any form of learning within your homes. All of us, we've been raised in African households. Mm-hmm. And we know all our African households has a strong attachment with education. And there is the home role of parents. That is what the minister is talking about. He's not saying this is cast in law, you must do A, B, C, D. If you can't, you don't need to bother yourself. Engage children in other meaningful home programs. Mm-hmm. That's what we call informal curriculum, like activities, engaging children in meaningful activities, and also encouraging them not to forget about the academic work. And this is where teachers come in. Teachers are on duty throughout. And if we are consulted by students and we are able to monitor what our students are doing using any remote means, that is allowed.
So which one is it? Which is it?
It's just tuition.
So what are we saying here? That you can have a combination of engagement so that you're engaged on the home level, but also engaged so that you don't really lose out, which is the fear that a lot of parents have, that my children might not, be in touch, may not be in touch with academics by the time these 6 months is over.
One simple word. The parents should not be so mad and obsessed with that there must be academic and their children are losing. That is rule number one. No child is losing. Whether they engage in academics or they don't, no child is losing. Mm-hmm. We shall resume from where we will be. But you are free to encourage your children to do their own home reading and academic work where it works. And where you can consult teachers, you are free to do so. Mm-hmm. But that is not a program, an official program of the ministry. Mm-hmm. It's just an encouragement. Yeah. And therefore, we don't need to debate a lot about this.
Mr. Sossion,
let the children stay at home, be safe. Where they can engage in learning, let them do so. Where they can't, they don't need to bother much.
What do you say about the proposal? And I'm sure that this was not in the proposal that KNUT had presented to the task force.
Yeah, it is not in the proposal, and therefore it is not. It is not.
You haven't heard my question. Yeah. My question is a bit different. It's with regards to resumption of classes for the candidate classes, Standard 8 and Form 4. There has been that, and it's still been pushed even by other education experts, that you could have allowed the Standard 8s and Form 4s to resume classes and sit their exams, even if they're sitting their exam early next year, but let them go back to school. What do you say to that?
Well, this is a matter we agreed. And looking at it, we stopped schooling, learning in the month of March.
Yep.
National exams were not going to be conducted in the month of March. It was going to be conducted in the month of October, after continuous teaching for another period from March to October.
Yep.
So what we are talking about here is stoppage of teaching and learning. We are not yet there to discuss about national examinations. And therefore, this obsession by Kenyans and households about national exams is the segment coming at the tail end of implementation of the curriculum. Mm-hmm. And therefore, we cannot bring in the exams and bring in examination classes. Furthermore, students in class 8 and Form 4 are human beings. You bring them back to school, at the peak of the virus, they will still be affected. They are human beings.
They're exposed.
And therefore, for us, and we have said very clearly as a union, exams are not a ticket to heaven, that you must pause examination classes to come in when the country is not ready. The exams should remain at the right time, at the tail end of the teaching of class 8 and Form 4, when all classes shall have resumed equitably. What we have agreed here is that there must be equity.
Okay.
A student in class 8 waiting to sit for exams is the same as a student in class 1, because all of them, their curricula was stopped in the month of March, and it must all resume at the same time. Furthermore, we would create one problem, that if you bring in examination classes and you take them through and they sit for exams, we will have a double intake in Form 1, and we'll have a huge enrollment. That will be, and there will be a general confusion across the board in terms of the curriculum. That does not work, and we have looked at it, the timetabling, the movement of students, and we cannot risk to have double intake in Form 1, which the country is not ready for. And therefore, all those suggestions are untenable. And we tell Kenyans, leave the professional work to the professionals.
There is the other suggestion by professionals who have said, okay, instead of saying that if you are in Standard 7, you still stay in Standard 7, you can move to Standard 8. And the teachers, because they are professionals, they would know how to compress the syllabus for Standard 7 and Standard 8 and be able to offer that learning.
We have seen as a union, these are the argument that was there, no other alternative. There should have been, these are the alternative of promoting all the students to the next class, and then we get back to make up for the loss. Some countries have even done that. But you see, that is what we call intellectual dishonesty. We have the freedom as a country to decide what is best for our education as a sovereign state. And we have discussed this at the sector level, and we have agreed that one we cannot cheat Kenyans. That, of course, we promote. It's not about promotion. It's about coverage of curriculum content. And therefore, beginning from where we stopped, by calling Form 1, who stopped learning on the 15th of March, they will continue covering Form 1 content, and they remain Form 1 until they cover the Form 1 work. That is when they'll be promoted to the next class. It will be wrong. It's practically wrong to think that you can promote, say, for example, a Form 3 class that has covered only mathematics work for 1.5 months of that year, and you promoted them to Form 4, and you want them to cover Form 4 work in 1 year, and also to cover the undone 75% work of Form 3. You will create a problem, psychological torture and things that do not work. Let us not experiment. And when people are putting forward theories that have not been tested, and they call it professional observation, we say that is fundamentally wrong. And therefore, we begin from where we stopped, and we will move. And fundamentally, if we resume normally in the month of January, for us, we see exams being conducted in the month of July and August. And academic year ending around that time. And we might begin a new academic year in the month of September 2021. And that is how it is. So we begin from where we stop, move the curriculum, end it where it ends, if this virus shall have been suppressed. And I think we should also prepare Kenyans and everybody and the world. Because right now, globally, over 1 billion children are unable to attend schools. Even governments that are trying to reopen schools, they are being forced to close. And I think let us not look at ourselves in isolation and push the very, very agenda that we are trying to think about within our households and within our social networks in the name of professionals and all these other bits. Let us look at the global trend of these issues. And we have seen the president of the U.S. for the last couple of days, he has started wearing a mask. And it is very clear that the U.S. is unable to reopen schools at the end of summer. That debate. So this is a global debate. And I think we should open Kenya to see what is the trends that are happening globally, the best practices, and I think what has gone on in Kenya in the education sector is the most democratic, the most sober engagement, and the decisions are the best. It is in the best interest of the health of learners and teachers, such that when we resume in the month of January, all the children shall be available, around, healthy and alive, and will begin afresh. These are the debates of the vices should just be dealt with by the households.
Right, Mr. Sossion,
And
in as much as you've talked about other countries in the world and how they are also dealing with this.
I've got a session in Parliament. Thank you. I've got a session in Parliament, and I pleaded that you'd allow me not more than 10 minutes, and I've got to prepare.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Wilson Sossion, as a nominated member of Parliament and Secretary General of the Kenya National Union of Teachers. We'll have another conversation shortly, soon. Have a good day.